G'day, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Swordplay NBA Supercoach podcast, live for the first time on YouTube and X as well. So get around us, guys. First time, very, very exciting. I'm hosting the show, but as always, the brains are below me. We'll start off with my brother Vernsy. How's your week been so far, brother?
Good life week. Had a mate's 30th and, got absolutely wrecked the other night. But, yeah, good life week. But unfortunately, NBA wise, I'm sure for anyone that watched last week, we know that me and Boz went two different directions. And it was not a good direction for me.
That's all right, Verns. It's a long season, and we're just at the beginning, my friend. You'll come home with a wet sail, I know that. Boz, legend, you are smashing it up in every format possible at the moment. How's your week been, and how is your NBA Supercoach going, my friend?
Yeah, boys, pleasure to be on once again, and the week's been great, life and NBA. Had a really positive week in terms of my score, and I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit in a moment. But happy to be here. Really keen to get hopefully some live interaction with some viewers.
Beautiful, mate. Well, I tell you what, we're going to cram a lot in the next hour here. So we'll touch on how we went for the week. We'll then talk about the injuries, both short-term and long-term. Look at those money makers. Look at the schedule. Extremely important, boys. Take a look at some of the money makers, and then we'll finish off by chatting about who we may look to captain this week. And we'll touch on some big questions as well. Wemby versus Jokic this week. That's going to be a big one. So we'll get into all that. But, boys, we're going to start off by talking about how we went this week. I'll quickly touch on my side. So 1,077. Always good to see a four-digit score there. Currently ranked 873 in the world, which for someone that doesn't know a lot about NBA Supercoach, I'm pretty happy with that, to be quite honest. The big letdown for me, Steph Curry. I brought him in, fellas, because of this wonderful schedule. And guess what? The man just didn't play. Got out in the court for a little bit, but all my hopes just went down the drain there. And look, the big win, I did bring the big fella in, the most expensive player in the game, Vernsey. I don't want to rub it in, but that paid off in absolute spades. Had the captaincy on him, and that's the reason why I got to a four-figure score this week. Vernsey, how about yourself, mate? I didn't want to rub that in too much, talking about my captain.
Look, it's all good. Things just went from bad to worse, honestly, in my week. Anyone that's following me on Twitter saw me already very upset from very first game from Joker. I think he came out with like 59 in his very first game of the week, and I was just like, this ain't it. Obviously, me and Boz, we went different directions. I went for a non-Jokic route, but focused a bit more on trying to get cash gen happening. And dodging Jokic was not worth it at all. I scored a 943, so pretty small score. Look, Jokic wasn't the only problem. I did have Butler in the team who, he got injured on a 3, so not counting that game. He also didn't play a second game. He only played 2 of his 4 games. Sabonis is someone I brought in for a great 2-week fixture, and unfortunately only plays 2 games in the week as well for some reason. And it just unfortunately got from worse. And I mean, we talked about it before the pod, but just the equivalence of how much Jokic was actually worth. You compare him to someone like Giannis. I captain Giannis. Giannis got outscored by 60 points as the second highest scoring player of the round. If you count that as a captaincy, it's technically 120 points difference if you brought Jokic in. 120 points over a 4-game week, 30 points per game. That's an equivalent to 18 mil player. So even though there's only like a 5 mil difference between Giannis and Jokic put 8 million worth of points difference between them in the 1 week. So this absolutely failed.
Vernsey, you win and you lose in this game sometimes. But as we said, just the 1 week. Long season ahead of us, my friend. Boz, you are killing it. Tell us all about it, mate.
Yeah, well, the trend continued. I jumped up the ranks, scored a 1127, so a pretty huge score this week, and got myself into 131. So looking pretty good so far. Potentially may take a bit of a step back next week, depending on my trades, just trying to weigh out whether it is worth, kind of getting in a Luka or a Wemby who I don't have, who I'm sure a lot of the other people do have because of their high scoring and good schedule. So look, really stoked with where I am right now. Probably my only blemish for the week was Jalen Johnson again missing a game on the back-to-back. Just don't know if I can trust this guy long-term now. I love him as a player, but if they're going to continue to rest him on the back-to-back, he's just someone that you can't own because you're not getting bang for buck.
It's tough, isn't it, mate? Unexpected injuries. You look at schedules, you load up, and then these things just happen, unfortunately. But that is the game of Supercoach. Now, boys, talking about the game of Supercoach, we better give a quick shout out to our open league. So if you are interested in joining the official Swordplay League, the code is 779588. That is 779588. And we'll put that down in the description. All right, boys. The bad news continues here because we are going to talk about some injuries. We're going to talk short term to start off with. Then we're going to move into some of the longer term injuries where we really need to be concerned. Now, Boz, we've got 5 players on the screen here. Where are you going to start off, mate?
As always, I will start left to right. So we've got Steph Curry, who for those that got him in 2 weeks ago, did the 100% right thing. He had probably one of the best schedules in the league. And things just haven't panned out. He's had an illness. So not even a muscular tissue injury, not even a concussion, a literal illness like that anyone can obviously get. And it's knocked him out for pretty much the entire week. To add salt into the wounds, Steve Kerr came out after today's game and said that he's expected to be ready for next week for their next game, which is in 2 days' time. So it looks like he's on the short term that he will be back for their next game. So I guess if you're someone that has Curry, I guess you may as well just keep him, in my opinion, for the week, unless you're pivoting to someone who potentially is going to set you up a bit better in the longer term. Anthony Davis, another one who, you can't trust him, but he is coming back from a calf injury. He's gone from out to doubtful. Now he's finally at that questionable tag, which means he's not too far away. He's day to day. He potentially might be ready for Dallas's next game. Geez, you'd be really ballsy to get on Anthony Davis, but the Dallas Mavericks have a really good schedule. They've got a lot of 4 games in a row. I think it's 3 in a row. Well, they might have already had one, but they have at least the next 2 4-game weeks. AD could be a really sneaky pod play, but I just wouldn't trust it. Jalen Johnson, really quickly, just don't trust him on a back-to-back. Atlanta go into 2 4-game weeks. However, in the first one of the 4 games, so this week coming up, he's got a back-to-back. It says he has a quad contusion, which is a fancy way of saying he's got a bruised quad. I don't believe it. I think they're just resting him on back-to-back, so I think he should be right for the next game. Austin Reeves, someone who we luckily all got off to probably get Jokic, most of us. He was named out and has not even played all week. He's hurt his groin, but again, he's now down to a questionable tag, so potentially back for Lakers next game. So I guess if you didn't trade him last week, I would just wait and see if he's named, because if he's named, you may as well just run with him for this next week, for their 4-game week. And then lastly, Josh Giddey. Now, funnily enough, Giddey rolled his ankle on what am I going to say? He got pretty much crossed up, and then a massive dunk from Aaron Gordon from the Denver Nuggets, I believe it was, absolutely broke Giddey's ankle to the point where he literally limped off the court. Now, he played out the game and said that he's okay. However, he's got a questionable tag next to his name now. So potentially, if you have Giddey or you're thinking of getting Giddey in, just wait and see if he does get named in. And that's one of those things that you have to be kind of active on Twitter till about 10:30 in the morning tomorrow. And I know we all have busy lives to deal with. So all 5 of these guys could very well play in the next game, but they could very well miss their next game as well.
Very good, mate. Now, Global's got a question here. Does Luka play all games this week, do you think?
It's a tough one. I looked at the Lakers' schedule, and I'd like to think that he will. The only thing that I'm concerned about is he's got that back-to-back on Friday, Saturday. So I think it might be Thursday, Friday for us. He's got that back-to-back at New Orleans and Milwaukee. So very well may be rested even in the first of the back-to-back. I know the Milwaukee game is a bit of a primetime ESPN game against Giannis, so I feel like both teams will want their stars to be playing. But that New Orleans game, they're no good. They've only won 1 or 2 games this season so far. So you could very easily see the Lakers potentially, resting Luka in the first of the 2 back-to-back games. But look, he's already been rested once. He's overcome that hopefully that thumb wrist injury. I'd like to think that knowing Luca, he's pretty durable, that he would want to play all 4 games. And I really hope they actually do end up playing him in all 4. He's actually someone I'm tempted to bring in just for a 1-week play to get a bit of a 4-game premium injection, because he's been scoring super well this season. But I'm going to say he plays all 4. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he does, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's rested on the first of the back-to-back.
Oh, doesn't it feel a little bit like unnecessary risk, though? I mean, he's basically a guaranteed trade next week as he's going into a double the following week. So he's a guaranteed 1-week play. Is it not just safer looking at guys that maybe just have a better fixture than risking it with Luca, who has already missed multiple games this season? Like, not for me personally.
Yeah, that's a good point, Verns. The only thing with Luca is his ceiling's massive. He's putting up monster scores and doing it at not great efficiency. So I'm just thinking like just a little bit of a point injection, because I won't probably have Wemby this week because I'll keep Jokic. So I'm just thinking, how can I kind of counteract those that have kept Wemby? But yeah, you're right in saying that he's pretty much a wasted trading because he has to be traded out next week.
Yeah, look, you're right. It might be a huge 1-week play. Might be huge. He might play all 4 games. He might score 200 points. He's good enough to do it. But does he play all 4 games? Maybe. His break even's already decently high, so you're not making a huge amount of money if he goes like a 150 or something. It'll be, yeah, as you said, maybe a good points injection, but I feel like an unnecessary risk, in my opinion.
All good points. All good points. How about long-term injuries? Here's where we get a little bit more concerned. Left to right, Boz, we're starting with Jordan Poole.
Yeah, well, I may as well touch on both the New Orleans guys. So Jordan Poole, Zion Williamson have both picked up smallish injuries, but they've both been given the reevaluated tag, which means that they're not coming back in a week. They're going to be reevaluated in a week. So for Jordan Poole, he has hurt his quad. I think it's a bit of a quad strain. And for Zion Williamson, he has aggravated a hamstring, which is something he's done quite often. Now, I think Zion's already 5 days into this 7-day reevaluation, so he may be back a lot sooner than Jordan Poole. But I think for our sake, we kind of hope that Zion's out a bit longer, because there is someone that we'll probably touch on in the cash cow segment or the low break-even segment that has gotten a lot of an increased role with Zion being out in Derek Queen. But yeah, those 2 guys, if you've got them, you can't start them this week, get them out. Jalen Green from Phoenix really did a bad hammy, it looks like. So he's just come back from a hammy, and the fact that he could barely walk without being assisted yesterday is not a good sign for a hamstring injury. I've pinged a hammy once or twice, and I've been able to walk on my own. He generally could not walk on his own. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was out in the long term. It doesn't really affect what you do there in Phoenix. Colin Gillespie is a rookie that some might have brought in last week. His role has continued to be bigger now that Jalen Green's out. Still, if you had Jalen Green, don't know why you would have, but yeah, he's got to go. Kawhi Leonard, frustrating because Clippers have a really good schedule, but he's been, in quotations from the coach Ty Lue, he's going to miss the next couple. So that basically means that he's only going to play at least 2 if he gets back this week. He's just injury prone. And I know I said last week on the podcast he's meant to play back-to-backs, but he pretty much lied to us because he got rested on the second end of a back-to-back already this season. Bam Adebayo's been out since the middle of the week with a toe injury. He's already been ruled out for next game. Now, the reason we say long-term, it's not because they're out for multiple weeks, but for guys like Adebayo, LaMelo Ball, they've already been ruled out for the next game. So for me personally, if I have one of these guys, I don't want to hold on to them or put them on my field hoping that they play the rest of the games in the week. They're just a straight trade out for me, in my opinion. So Adebayo ruled out for the start of this week. If you have him, don't pick him. Cam Thomas in Brooklyn, he's out for about 3 to 4 weeks with a hamstring. He's someone that isn't really relevant Supercoach-wise, but potentially now we've seen an increased role for some other guys, especially some rookies that maybe can come into a bit of relevance over the next couple of weeks. So just keep an eye on who steps up in Brooklyn. And lastly, LaMelo Ball, he's been out all week with an ankle injury. He's confirmed out for their next game tomorrow, and which is annoying because they actually have a really good start to this week with a 4-game week in Charlotte.
Beautiful summary, Boz. Verns, anything to add to that, mate?
No, I think Boz did a really good job of all of it. Short, simple, to the point.
Love it. That's the way we do it around here. All right, boys, let's talk about some of the top performers of the week. So let the Supercoach screen up into the stage, or just grab this one off. I literally have 10 image files here. Boz absolutely put me to work before the potty this week, but here we are here looking at some of the top performers. Might look at the top 10 here. Starting off with Randall with a 116. Alex Sarr, how good is that to see? A 117 from the great man. We had Sengun with a 118. 124 for Cunningham. Duran with a 144, SJ with a 145, Giannis a 148, and Big Nicola with a 208. What's standing out to you here, boys? Top performers for this week?
Well, personally, myself, look, some of the names up there, it's great to see. I love seeing someone like Alex, obviously a next star that we know from the NBL. Some of these guys that were in my team at the start of the season, and they didn't end up finishing in your team, and you're seeing them just go nuts right now, and you're just sitting there thinking, damn. Saying that though, some of them didn't have the greatest fixtures. Even with he has 1 4-game week in these first 5 weeks. It's great to see a week from him now, but logically there was no way you were really going to go there, because money could be better spent with better fixture. Sort of the same thing for Randall as well. He has 1 4-game week in the first 5 weeks. So look, I do think we can sort of see that it's also pivoting towards these centers. I feel like centers are scoring pretty easily. Obviously, Sengun is there as well. You have Hardenstein there. As we mentioned, Randall's there. Claxton's there. So it's definitely favored towards these centers a little bit. As we mentioned, probably the guys that are taking more efficient field goals. Obviously, you can see people like Shea and Maxi up there who have just been absolutely phenomenal. But excluding that, obviously, there's a lot of centers.
Love it. Boz, top performers.
Yeah, well, Vern summed it up really well there. I think every week you'll probably see from 1 to 4, probably usually going to be the top dogs that we all know, the ones that probably have the 4-game week. So whenever a Jokic, Giannis, Shea, whenever probably Luka has a 4-game week that he plays all 4, Wemby, we're probably going to see these guys in the top 3 just because their star plays and their output just suits the format so much. But, every given week now from 5 to 10, we're going to see some different names, I think. We're going to see teams that have good schedules. We're going to see guys that, have one really good week, because that's kind of all it takes, to be honest. And someone like Jalen Duran, he put up, I think he had 20 rebounds in a game, and today even he had 20 and 19 rebounds. He's gone on an insane tear in this last week. And I do think Detroit had the 4 games, but he really showed that center position is so suited to someone that's not going to miss many shots. All they're there to do is put the ball in the ring and rebound, so they'll basically not get many turnovers, and hopefully they can add a couple of defensive stats along the way. So Jalen Duran's probably someone that we can actually start to look at now when Detroit have a nice run, because, he's just a monster on the boards, and he's playing with a lot of energy out there, which is really good. And look, to be honest, I don't need to touch on anyone else. I think everyone knows the big dogs. I think everyone knows who they actually favor. I think Tyrese Maxey, once the Philadelphia schedule gets really good, I think he's someone that we can probably lock in as a top 3 scoring point guard, because it looks like he's got the keys to Philadelphia. Yes, Embiid's back and playing quite well, but I think Maxey has just shown and solidified that for now 3 weeks in a row, he has scored big and he's averaging big this season. So he's someone that we have full confidence in being one of those top premium performers. I think that's what I got from Maxey this week.
Beautiful, mate. Well, we're going to go from the primos and then talk about some of the money makers this week. Now, if anyone does have access to Supercoach Gold, just head to the cash cow section and you'll be able to see some of the biggest price changes for the week. So you can see 1 to 60. We've got AJ Mitchell up over $1 million, so 1.1 just last week. We've got Denny there, and there's been a few questions about him. My mate Rhino, Jalen Duran, Will Richard, Cedric Coward. Boz, is there anyone in particular that you want to touch on here in regards to our big money makers?
What I want to point out first and foremost is that it's not just rookies. So I think in the past, or especially in different formats, not in the past of this format, but in the AFL and NRL, and I'm sure NBL, a lot of the time we just expect our cash cows to be rookies, those low basement prices, because they have such low break evens and it's easier for them to actually make cash. But, it shows here that some of these guys that are making the big cash are these kind of mid to just not premium price, but kind of in between that mid to premium price. So, for example, your Denny Advia, your Jalen Duran, all it's taking is one massive week for them and they can make nearly $1 million in cash. So it's interesting to see that we're not just relying so much on rookies. Not to say that rookies aren't our best option, because they are, but I think as the season goes on and teams kind of solidify their lineups and rotations, we're not going to have that luxury of having all these cheap forwards, these cheap rookies. I think we're going to have to start to kind of think outside the box a bit and look more at kind of what medium price players have potentially got a role injection, what players are injured from teams. Can I now bank on someone like, for example, AJ Mitchell, who was a basement price player, but, halfway through the season, he might be at 10 million. But if OKC start resting players, then he's someone we might have to jump on to hope that they can actually rise a bit more in price. So I don't think that we can just rely on us finding these 3.5 million guys now to make our cash. So, these medium price guys like Denny Advia are just coming out with a massive week. Jalen Duran, it's crazy to see that, cash is coming from everywhere, which is good. It makes the game more dispersed in terms of who people decide to select.
Beautiful. That's what the game is all about, mate. We need to make that cashola. Let's move on to the schedule now. As always, a massive shout out to our good friend Arson Dragon. What I've tried to do this week, and it may be a little bit hard to see, the image isn't overly big, but I've tried to blank out the first 3 rounds. So we're focusing on the first column that you can see in color there. Verns, very quickly, anything stand out to you immediately here?
It's got to be the team that kind of suck, but it's New Orleans. New Orleans, four games in a row. It's nuts. Their fixture is so good. You can get these players in and you can just put them on field and not worry about them for the next few weeks. So that's the one that obviously stands out. Unfortunately, they are playing pretty poorly. They are losing. And they're not scoring even that well, honestly. That's the only unfortunate thing.
Yeah, we will take a look at some of the good short-term teams, long-term teams, and avoids in a little bit, mate. Boz, what do you get out of this wonderful graphic for the week?
Well, it depends on kind of how you play. So I know I've touched on in the past that some people, and me included, I kind of look 1 week at a time, which probably you call me crazy, but you should be probably planning a bit more in the future. But this graphic here is just so perfect, whether you want to look at the immediate week, whether you want to look 2-3 games down the track, whether you want to look around times where not many teams are playing. So I know in that round 8, for example, more than half the league have only 2-game weeks. And you might be thinking, oh, my player has a 2-game week coming up. But you can actually see there that the majority of the teams do. So it's not as big of a burden that they have a 2 in that week than other teams. So, Verns, on your point, if we actually took away that 2-game week, look at the Pelicans run. They've actually technically, aside from that 2-game week, have another stretch of 4 games on the other side of that 2-game week. So I'm just begging for there to be someone from the Pelicans that stands up. Now, money making, Derek Queen, it looks like he's a no-brainer at the moment because he's got one of the lowest break-evens. He's probably had his best week of the season this week, albeit Zion being out. But I just think he has to play in the next, at least couple of weeks, and I think he's deserved that. I look at their premiums, though, and I struggle. There's a guy named Trey Murphy III who I really enjoy. He's a great fantasy basketball player because he's quite efficient. And to be honest, he kind of fits the role of the Supercoach format. Efficiency, scores well, rebounds well, gets steals and blocks from the small forward position. And if we look at his price, he's only priced at $13.5 million. So he's kind of around that Denny Advia price. Now, for example, if Portland didn't have as good a fixture than they do, I think a lot of us would be finding it hard to not pick Trey Murphy. But I think the fact that a lot of other teams have good schedules that we'll touch on in a moment, I think people are finding it easy just to kind of overlook this guy. But for Trey Murphy, I just want to touch on his week this week. And I think this is what we can expect moving forward. Now, he played 3 games, so, just take that with a grain of salt. But he averaged 24 points, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists with a steal, just over a steal, just under a block on 50% shooting. Did not miss from the free throw line. He's a very good free throw shooter. And only had 1.7 turnovers in that stretch. So over 3 games, if we look at Trey Murphy for the week, that netted him 87 points. So someone, for example, who I kept this week was Devin Booker. He scored the exact same amount of points as Trey Murphy in the same amount of games. And I thought, wow, for Devin Booker to do that for me, that's awesome. So something like Trey Murphy, who not many people have spoken about, I think he could actually potentially be someone that you could just plug in at your small forward position and, really just reap the rewards from what he can potentially do. Now, do I expect the turnovers to be this low? No. Do I expect the free throws to be at 100%? Probably not. But he is pretty much an 85+% shooter. Do I feel like the or anything else can drop. Not really, to be honest. He's traditionally scored mid-20s a game. He's traditionally got 6-7 rebounds, okay? And he's also pretty much averaged around that 3 assist mark. So I think he could actually be a really consistent, if he stays healthy, because he's one of those guys that the body has let him down. He could be a sneaky option from the Pelicans that I wouldn't kind of knock you if you put into your team.
Beautiful, mate. Well, you talked about some teams with a nice schedule, some okay short term, and then the avoid. So long term, we're thinking that Cleveland, the Pelicans, Atlanta, Charlotte, Dallas, Portland, and the Clippers are looking pretty good, mate.
Yeah, well, I'll just rattle off kind of maybe the next 4 weeks for each of those teams, just to give everyone a bit of an idea. But in the long term, so we have Atlanta. They've got 4-4-3-4. So they only have 1 week, but they don't have a 4-game week. We have Charlotte, who again have a 4-4-3-4. We have Cleveland, who have a 4-4-3-4. It's going to be a very common theme, this 4-4-3-4. Dallas Mavericks have a 4-4-3-4. Portland have a 4-4-3-4. Clippers have a 4-4-3-4. And then Pelicans have a 4-4-4-4. So Pelicans have the best schedule, but there are a lot of teams in this kind of bucket here that they're only missing 1 less game than their Pelicans. And when we look at some of these teams, there are probably more consistent and potentially higher scoring options. So, for example, James Harden from the Clippers, or even a Donovan Mitchell from Cleveland. If these guys are playing 4 games in their week, they're probably got a bit of a higher ceiling than potentially banking on a Trey Murphy, for example, to get us these points. So just because Pelicans have the 4-4-4-4 doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to get that production just based on the schedule.
Very nice, mate. All right, let's move on to the short-termers. We see 8 teams here. We've got the Warriors, Lakers, Bucks, Suns, Kings, Spurs, Jazz, and Orlando.
So with the short term, it's literally this week and potentially next week. But I'm only going to touch on this week, to be honest. Now, the Lakers and Orlando are 1-week buys because they have... Oh, sorry, actually, the Lakers are a 1-week buy. They're a 4-game week into a 2-game week. So Verns correctly touched on it before, saying it's quite risky to actually bring a Lakers guy in this week. If you have them, keep them. But I wouldn't actually bring one in, which is a good point. Orlando have a 4-4-2. So if you're keen on an Orlando guy, just know that in 2 weeks' time, you're going to have to get rid of him. So I don't really like Banchero, and I can kind of explain why really briefly. He just doesn't shoot the ball efficiently enough. He's at 45% for the season and a high 4 turnovers a game. So for me, Banchero, while he does put up the nice points, rebounds, assists that we like in this game, he just doesn't do it efficiently enough, and he loses a lot of those points based on turnovers and field goal. But then teams like the Warriors, the Bucks, the Suns, the Kings, the Spurs, the Jazz, they've got 4 into 3, which isn't as bad as a 4 into 2. But again, look, unless you're bringing in maybe Wemby from the Spurs or maybe a Devin Booker from the Suns, there's no one really I would recommend to bring in from the Warriors, Kings, etc. Just because I think in the future their schedule gets bad quick.
Talking about bad schedules, we are avoiding the Rockets, Wizards, and 76ers. Tell us why, mate.
Super simple. All these teams we've just touched on have 4-game weeks, and they have 4-game weeks, and then 3-game weeks and 4-game weeks. Rockets have 3-2-3, which is yuck. The Wizards have 3-3-2, which is still not good enough to bring in a premium. And the 76ers have a 2-game week coming up. So I would not be trading in anyone from these teams. Would I be trading someone out? If you had to maybe field someone, so like a Kai-Shawn George that a lot of people jumped on after week 1, he's come back to earth a bit. I did touch on that, his field goal isn't great traditionally, and he does turn the ball over, and that has impacted his score and cash in a little bit, but he was the right play at the time. He probably isn't someone I trust on field. If you can keep him on your bench to make some more money, sure, feel free. Or like for the 76ers, if you have Edgecombe, he's still got a very low break even. Or, I think it's in the 20s now, but I think you can get that in two games. If you want to keep him on your field, get rid of him. But if you can actually afford to put him on your bench, may as well keep him on your bench. But yeah, I wouldn't be bringing in anyone from these guys in the next couple of weeks, to be honest.
Great advice, mate. Now, Boz, I need to put a couple of comments up here because you have some major fans in the audience, and you've got a bit of pocket money here, mate. Mr. Chips has donated $2 to you, Boz. Boz, you are my goat. Please give me a shout out. So, Boz, Mr. Chip's a big fan.
Yeah, feel like I have to give Mr. Chips a shout out. Can't confirm nor deny whether I know this person, but I really appreciate the donation. It goes a long way. And hopefully you can continue to support the show. So thank you very much, Mr. Chips.
Good man, Mr. Chips. Thank you very much. Let us know, Mr. Chips, in the comments section. What is your favorite flavor? Don't mind a bit of light and tangy myself. But it keeps on coming here, Boz. Super cool. 6-7. I cannot stand this number. Being a primary school teacher, let me tell you, no maths equations are ever going to equal 6-7. I can tell you that much. But Boz, a shout out for super cool.
Yeah, super cool. I'm just going to keep it at super cool because I think, those that know me well as the teacher, to be honest, my brain just naturally spits out the next two letters, numbers, I should say, far too often without even thinking. But yeah, again, thank you so much. Hopefully I can, continue to live up to the standards that you expect. So thank you very much, super cool, for the donation.
Good on you. Super cool. Thank you very, very much. All right. Now, we've talked about some of the nice runs here. Let's talk about some of the primos that are on good runs. We've got 3 players up on the screen. Vernsy, is there anyone in particular that really floats your boat this week, mate?
Yeah, look, definitely Donovan Mitchell. I obviously just posted my team reveal review like 15 minutes before we jumped on this live. Spoiler, Mitchell's in.
Check it out, everyone.
Yeah.
Vernsy's channel, check it out.
So, yeah, I mean, Mitchell's obviously absolute gun. He missed, I think, 1 game earlier in the season, but yeah, had a massive week this week. I think dropped 58 in 1 game. He's had a few lowish scores, unfortunately, but I don't know, he's been pretty good so far. Very good for his price as well, playing above that price tag. So hoping with a good schedule here that I'm going to get some good value.
Nice, mate. All right, Boz, left or right? You're starting left, traditional way?
Yeah, why not? So we'll start with Danny Advia. Had a massive week. He was someone that came onto the radar late last season. He was someone that was tipped to improve at Portland, but I guess took a massive jump right at the end when they were kind of resting players. And he's kind of started this season, maybe in that first week, just a little bit flat, but, I'll rattle off what he did this week and it'll probably really convince you to start him, to be honest. But he averaged over 3 games this week, 30 points. Which, look, you're probably not going to expect that, but he's a high point scorer. 9 rebounds with 6 assists, a steal and a block a game at 46.5%, which is quite good, to be honest, and 91% from the free throw line. Turnovers are a touch high, but the overall production of what he was doing really set him up for a massive week. So, yeah, he's the perfect guy with, not being too expensive to actually make a bit of money this week whilst also potentially gaining points. If I'm correct in saying, DR, is he priced around that high 13 million mark, 13.8 or something like that for Denny?
Oh, it'd be close, mate.
That's right. I'll keep talking, but he's just at a perfect price point where you can actually, for example, with myself, I'm thinking about, do I just get rid of Jalen Johnson, who's not playing back-to-backs on a 4-game week, and pivot straight to a Denny Advia and actually make money as well while I'm doing it, and potentially Denny Advia matches his score. He's a bit of a no-brainer mid-price pick, in my opinion, Denny Advia. I think if we're tossing up between Advia and Trey Murphy, who I touched on before, it's a tough one, but I think I would go Advia over Murphy. Murphy has the security of a better long-term schedule. However, I think Advia is a bit more consistent in the way he scores. James Harden had a bit of a flat week, has been off with some personal issues. I think I can only imagine from watching the documentary on Netflix that he potentially has had his first or second child, I think, with his partner. So that's not confirmed, but I can only imagine that was why the personal reasons made him miss 2 games. He came back in later this week, didn't really play well. The only thing, keeping us with Harden in our minds is the Clippers' great run. So they've got that 4-4-3-4. He's a proven player, James Harden. Efficiency can be an issue at times, turnovers as well. He gets a bit lazy sometimes and does those high turnovers. But again, the Clippers, they're desperately needing a win as well. They've been poor to start the year. They're in a bit of a crisis mode early. And I can only think that they're going to rely on James Harden with Kawhi Leonard out to get him a few wins this week. So he's a pretty solid option. And I actually really like Vern's shout out there for Donovan Mitchell. He had a massive week. He was the 2nd ranked fantasy basketballer. But he was doing that with 33 points, 5 rebounds, 6 and a bit assists, 2 steals, a third of a block. on 50% shooting, didn't miss a free throw, and only 2 turnovers. So highly efficient, great ball security, doing a lot, scoring a lot. Do I think that comes down a little bit? I think it does. But at the same time, he's that good of a player that he can put up another one of these weeks where he's pretty much flawless. They did get Darius Garland back, the Cavs. But what we do know about that is they're not playing him on back-to-backs because they're doing the whole injury management stuff. And they do have a back-to-back this week. So they play Miami away, then they play Miami away again after a day's rest. Then they have a back-to-back and go back home and play Toronto. And then they have a night off and play Memphis. If I look at the schedule, they're 3 really juicy matchups as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think Donovan Mitchell is going to be stopped by anyone on any of those teams. So he's a really nice pickup there, Verns. And I think maybe after this podcast, there'll be a few more people that follow in your footsteps.
Look, you also, I think, just convinced me on Advia. It was one of those things where I was also considering him because I personally had Trey Murphy myself, but I actually just look at that fixture, and we kind of talked about it before, where obviously over the 4-game stretch, they're only missing 1 game less, but then we talked about Pelicans after the 2-game week, they have this 4 in a row again, but Portland actually have 4 in a row after the 2-game week as well. Between week 4 to 12, they only have 1 less game. And I'm pretty sure the Pelicans have the most games out of any team over that stretch. So I'm like, oh man, if I move to Advia over Murphy, I'm really only missing 1 game. And he has looked better. He has definitely looked better. I mean, Pelicans have looked really bad.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
I think I might go there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he'd be very popular this week, Danny Advia. And, again, I said I don't think he holds up the stats that he did this week, but it wouldn't be a massive drop-off. And would he be expecting him in a 4-game week if he's playing all 4 games? I'm expecting at least 110 from Denny, which he can definitely do.
Nice, mate. All right, we have some absolute superstars here on the screen. Potential targets for 1-week plays. We've obviously got Giannis, Wemby, Booker, and Luka. Verns, I'm going to go to you first again here. Anyone in particular stand out for you? You like all 4? You're muted, Verns.
Sorry about that, guys. Been muting on and off. It's raining a bit.
All right, mate.
Sorry, but I will talk about all 4 nice and quickly. I mean, Giannis, I feel like you probably should have been on him last week, considering he had 2 4 games in a row and how good he is. I think it's fine to go for the 1-week play here because after that 1 week, he goes into a 3-game and then 2 4 games again anyway. So it's not even really a 1-week play. You can easily hold him over the next 4. So I think Giannis, great buy. Go for it if you haven't got him. Now, Wemby's an absolute nightmare for me personally. Didn't start him. He was amazing. And then out of nowhere, teams have just been taking it to him. So physical with him, really shutting him down. They're attacking his ball handling as well. And he just hasn't been the Wemby that we saw in week 1. And I feel conned into making a bad play for Wemby. Bad play in hindsight, and to a degree, going Wemby when I did last week, it cost me Jokic the following week. So Wemby, now I'm all for dodging Wemby. Not a good fixture, and as of recent, hasn't had good form. We kind of talked about Luka earlier, where, there's a ceiling there, but is he really going to play all 4? Probably, but maybe not. And then even if he does, he's got a 2-game week. And then Booker, who's we've seen sort of in week 2, he went bonkers week 2. This week he was pretty decent this week, 87 or so. So he was good without being great, but obviously a lot more affordable. So, unlike these other big dogs you're going for, you got to pay 20 mil plus for one of these guys. Booker's obviously the cheaper 1-week play, and 1-week plays are perfectly fine, guys. Like this is a game mode where you have unlimited trades. You might look at your team and think, wait, next week, I actually just don't have any trades to make. Like I have so many guys on double 4-game weeks that I don't actually need to move any premiums next week if I bring another premium in with a good fixture. So rather than bringing in a guy with a good fixture, you can target someone else who maybe only has the 1-week play, bounce them back out next week, and work from there, sort of thing. So, yeah.
Love it, Vernsey. Boz, what can you add to that? Primo's on 1-week play.
Yeah, not too much more to add. I think when we say 1-week play, it's more looking at kind of what we expect them to do this week, because to be honest, aside from Luka, the rest of these guys you hold on to because they do have 3 games in next week. So it's not the be all and end all, but it's not like these Adviers or Donovan Mitchells that are giving us those consistent 4-4s in a row. But yeah, just really quickly, if you didn't have Giannis to start with, I'm unsure why you get him in now because their run kind of starts to peter off. Wemby just doesn't have a good fixture to start the year. I understood everyone's hype around him, but the thing was in round 1, everyone played 3 games. So I don't know if that kind of actually reflected what he was going to do the next couple of weeks. Like he's got a 4 this week, but then he has 2 3s again. And like, you know, if you've got Wemby and you're not going to Jokic and you can't get to Jokic, you need to get Jokic because he's going to outscore Wemby by so much. And when Jokic has the 4-game weeks coming up, that yeah, Wemby's just an interesting one. Like if you have him, you got to keep him, but at the same time, it's like you got to start thinking about next week. Or don't even worry about what Wemby does this week. Just be happy that he's on your team, but start thinking about how you're going to get Jokic next week. To be honest, Booker, yeah, I think that's a bit of a bias from me. I just love the way he plays. I've had him in my team. He was on for at least a 95 this week, and then he just did 2-3 stupid turnovers towards the end of yesterday's game, and that just killed his score. Yeah. And then Luke is the one where it's like you literally are only having him for 1 week. Like he's in your team for 1 week and then he's out. Whereas the other 3 you kind of keep in your side, unless obviously you're upgrading to someone like a Nikola Jokic or a Shea who goes back to a 4-game week the following week.
I like it. So, look, if you're up for a quick fling, Luka could be a man, or else maybe take a look at one of the other 3. But we get to the risky guys now. We touched on these blokes earlier on in the injury section, so we won't spend a lot of time here. But, Boz, what are you thinking? Would you be playing any of these blokes on field or even bringing them in this week?
Oh, yeah, you'd be gutsy too. And I think for most people that we're looking at Curry, for example, most people would already have him, I think. So they'd be very frustrated. So the fact that he's risky, it's like he's missing through illness. You know, yes, he hasn't missed through injury yet, which is great. But, you know, can we trust him to play all 4 games next week? If I look at the Golden State schedule, I don't think he plays a back-to-back. No, I lied to you. He does. So he plays an OKC into a Spurs back-to-back to start the week. He's just coming off an illness. If that flares up again, do they rest him on the second half? Not sure. If he's in your team and you're not upgrading him to someone of relevance, I think you just got to keep him for 1 more, then get rid of him and think elsewhere. But yeah, I wouldn't be bringing him in. There's just no point. AD, I'm so glad he's 20 million. If he was like 16 million, I would be seriously fighting demons. I would be fighting demons to not bring this guy in and just risk it that he plays, because when he does play, he's insane. And Dallas have a really good schedule. But yeah, I just think he's way too risky with his just chronic injuries that keep coming up week in, week out to get him in. And then Jalen Johnson, like his ceiling is so high. And we saw that in week 2. He came up with 135 in that 4-game week, albeit the games were spaced out nicely. He didn't have a back-to-back. In the 2 weeks, either side of that, he's only played 3-game weeks, but he's been rested in the 2 games that are on the end of a back-to-back. So he's someone that I have him. I think I have to get rid of him. I think it's a non-negotiable. I know he has 2 4-game weeks in a row, but I really just don't want to have him be rested on this back-to-back coming up. And if you're someone looking at getting him in because Atlanta have a good schedule, again, you'd be very risky to do it. I wouldn't recommend it because I've already gone through a bit of pain with him. But again, he's someone that have already seen, he can come out with a 140 in a 4-game week very easily with the way he plays.
Beautiful. Vernsy, would you take the risk on bringing any of these blokes in yourself, or you avoiding
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
All right. Short and simple from Verns. Nah, not going there. Very, very nice, mate. All right. We are now going to put the next image up, and it's a bit of a question that people have been talking about this week, and I think we pretty much know the answer, but Wemby versus Jokic. Oz, is this an easy answer, or what's going on here, man?
Well, it's funny because you told us after week 1 that, in round 4, Wemby's going to have a 4-game week and Jokic's going to have a 3-game week. Everyone would be like, yeah, well, I'm getting Wemby in. And I think that's what people did. They got Wemby in early because they saw the potential in the ceiling. And, fast forward 2 extra weeks and everyone's like, oh my God, I wish I got Jokic in instead of going early on Wemby. So this question can be answered in so many ways. Obviously, if we're looking at it face value and it's like, who can you own, whether it's short-term, long-term, I think Jokic is the one you need to own. if we're looking at it in the sense that you have Jokic but not Wemby, do you trade? Because my original thoughts, and I'll tell the viewers this, but my original thoughts over the next 4 weeks were just to kind of yo-yo between Jokic and Wemby and just trade one in and trade one out for each other each week. But I'm not going to do that anymore because I've seen what Jokic can do. And I think in 3 games, Jokic can absolutely match Wemby and most other players on the 4-game week. Maybe not. Maybe Wemby and Luka and Giannis are those in their own kind of pedigree in the 4-game weeks. But I don't think Jokic would be too far off in getting close. I think Jokic last week in a 3-game week was the second highest scorer. And the only one that scored more than him from memory was Tyrese Maxey, I think. So Jokic is showing that in 3 games, he's matching these 4-game premiums. So if you have Jokic, no, you are not trading him to Wemby just because Wemby has a 3-game week. Now, if you have Wemby this week, do you keep him or do you trade him? Or if you could actually trade to get Jokic, for example, and kind of beat that curve, like, do you do it? That's the tough question. And that's the reason why I wanted us to talk about this. This is the question I thought, like, if you have Wemby, do you move to Jokic? I'm torn. I really think that Wemby will be better than what he was this week. And Verns was right. Teams are going hard at him. Teams are doubling him. Teams are getting those guys that love getting up in the face of people like Marcus Smart and Dylan Brooks, those guys that you love to have on your team, but you hate to play against them. They're getting those guys to be up in Wemby's face. And to be honest, because he plays so far out from inside the paint, he actually struggles when he has the ball outside the 3-point line. So unless Spurs kind of reinvent themselves to get him more looks inside, I do think he's better, Wemby. I do think he's better than what he put out. I'm going to say I wouldn't actually trade Wemby to Jokic this week, but I would start to make some moves around my team to make sure I can get Jokic next week. Because I still want to back in my primos, and back in that Wemby on a 4-game week will be massive. But I would make sure that in the back of my mind, I'm preparing to get Jokic next week. Do you agree, Verns? Or do you have differing opinion?
No, I think I agree with that. I think you hold Wemby, and back my mind, Wemby is probably going to Jokic next week. We touched on it earlier. Like the season started, the teams are playing like center on center. Like their center would go to Wemby, they would try to match Wemby with the biggest guy they had, and he would just dominate them. And then teams realize that ain't it. Get these more agile, more physical guys, ones that will like abuse him if he tries to dribble the ball, but they'll also like not let him get inside to do what he's been doing for the first 6 games, and that's the question here. If you get Wemby that you had in the first 6 games, playing on this 4-game week, he's gonna go 200. That's what he was doing. But I think teams have figured him out now. And it's more realistic to say that we might be getting between a 100 to 120, which Jokic, honestly, could very well outscore that very easily, in fact. So I think I hold Wemby. I think most people should hold Wemby for the upside of, hey, if he has 2 bonkers games where he goes 50-50, then you're set up. You're set up for a good week, even if the other 2 are subpar. So I think we hold him for that, and we'll reevaluate, but I think most likely we're just going to Jokic next week.
Like a Vernsey, and it's tough as a non-owner, mate. I don't know from experience, and again, I don't want to rub that in, but good advice, boys. Now we are going to talk captains. Boz, before that, was there anything in particular that you wanted to talk about?
In terms of captain, sorry. Oh, sorry, Verns, go.
Oh, sorry, Vernsey.
Sorry, we might have if I chime in. Before we jump in the captains, I do just want to bring up that we do have the Supercoach Cup hitting this week as well, guys, for those that aren't paying 100% attention to that sort of thing. Supercoach Cup is a new thing that they've released where they're going to be doing, basically, it says it kicks off in round 5, but it's a little bit of a lie because it's the top 16,000 teams for the weekly score of round 4 that qualify for that. So it's technically like a qualifying round this week where the top 16,384 teams will qualify for the Supercoach Cup, which will then just be like a tournament style brackets where you just verse one person each week, and it's an elimination style. You get outscored, you get eliminated, sort of thing, right up until the end. If you guys did, I think DR's AFL like charity league tournament, they did a similar sort of thing with that. I think Skodfather might have done it with you guys. But
Yeah.
it'll be a similar thing to that. It's really cool and something that you can kind of focus on. This isn't just for NBA as well. It's coming out this week as well in EPL. So, some of these Supercoach game modes where maybe you're not traveling that well, you haven't had the greatest start to the year, and you're sitting there thinking, God, can I really be bothered with this? You got something in the short term that you can focus on. I mean, I look at Boz's score and it makes me feel very sad being the rank I am right now. But I'm just like, you know what? We got this cup kicking off. I'm going to focus on trying to smash that out, do as well as I can there. And then hopefully, later down the track, cup will end and I'll look at my rank and I'll be happy with it.
Good shout out, Verns and I. Wasn't even up to date with the cup. So a very, very nice shout out there. And this is a time to start flying people with the cup coming up. Now, Boz, before we get to captains, is there anything else you want to touch on? Any players, plans for this week, etc., mate?
Maybe just quickly some break-evens. Just maybe look at the top 10 break-evens and see if there's anyone we can consider getting in, especially those rookies. Because if we want to make some money or prepare for Jokic next week, for those that don't have him, we need to kind of create some cash somewhere.
Good call, mate. All right, let's take a look at the break-evens. So we can see some break-evens in the negatives here. We've got Mitchell right at the top. Are we doing anything with Mitchell here, Boz?
He's a tough one because, if you jumped on him after week one, you're reaping the rewards. He's just playing really well each week. He's that kind of first off the bench for OKC. He's actually been starting, and OKC have been pretty keen to rest some guys and get some rest into them. So Chet Holmgren's missed a few games with some injury. Some of their other bench players Lou Dort's a starter, but he's been missing. Aaron Wiggins, another solid bench player for OKC, he's been out here and there. So he's really taken his opportunity. He's really just kind of been really consistent for them and someone they trust now to play. So look, at the price he's at 7.7, I think we've missed the boat. If you're really wanting to make big cash, I think we have missed the boat. In the next couple of weeks, Jalen Williams, their actual Jalen Williams, not the Jalen Williams, he's expected to be back and he will be taking a lot of shots and a lot of the play and probably demote Mitchell to not much of a role, to be honest. So I don't think you get him now, but if you've got him, you just keep him. Ride him on the bench in the 3-game weeks. Yeah, I know Verns has him. He was a really good bring in their 4-game weeks. They got a 4-game week next week. If you're really struggling to fill one of those shooting guard, point guard positions on the court, you just throw him in and he will work wonders for you. But yeah, AJ Mitchell, shout out to him because he's been really, really good to start the year.
Very nice. Vernsy, anything standing out to you here? Are there any names on the screen where you're saying, get in my team now? Your break-even's too low to pass you up?
No, I don't think that exists. The other thing we need to take into account with the break-evens, though, is it's different depending on the amount of games you play. So if you're a guy with a 2-game week break-even, you're going to have a naturally lower break-even than a guy with a 4-game week break-even. Obviously they played twice the amount of games. They're going to get twice the amount of points, so their break-even's much higher. So technically, AJ Mitchell, yes, he has a -10 break-even, but if you have a guy on a 4-game week, let's just say, for example, Walsh was on a 4-game week, even though he has a -8 break-even with an extra game, you're going to assume he probably scores more points, making up for the additional, the slightly lower, slightly higher break even. So that's something like a Kalkbrenner you take into account for that. Kalkbrenner obviously has a 15 break even. He's been huge to start the season, but he's got a 4-game week this week. Now, if you take technically 20 points off his score because he had a 3-game week, maybe he'd have a -5 break even and would be talking about him. So yes, the break evens can be a little bit misleading in that sense, guys. I do recommend sometimes looking at this, but also filtering for those guys with the 4-game weeks to sort of check what they've got because theirs will be naturally higher. But yeah, just got to be aware of that. Saying that, a lot of these names, honestly, I don't know these names, it's really going to change. Each week it's going to change. It's whoever had a really big week, just that week, because obviously we only have like the 1 week rolling break evens. So you've one really big week and you're just going to pop up out of nowhere. So yes, if you haven't paid attention to some of the rookies for a week, they just come out of nowhere.
Like it, mate. Like it. All right, Boz. Anyone tickling your fancy here, mate?
Yeah, I'll do a quick little one for you and I'll let you know when to scroll down. But number 2, Isaac Okoro, he's a starting small forward for Chicago. Traditionally, someone who doesn't do much, just kind of more of a defensive player. He actually had a very good week this week in terms of actually producing on the offensive end. If we look at his scores in round 1 and 2, you'll see that he got a couple negative games and a couple really small games. He wasn't starting to start the year, I don't think, or if that, he wasn't playing much. I think his role and minutes have increased a touch. Do I expect him to put out that 58 points over 3? Probably not. Probably looking more in between what he scored in that Philadelphia and Milwaukee game. So maybe like a 17 points is a nice little average for him. So I actually think he could, in the short term, make a little bit of money with that low break even. They have a 3-game week this week, though. So if you bring him in, you're not going to play him on your court. Then they go into a 4-game week next week. So it could be someone maybe you get on now to save an extra trade next week. If you just keep scrolling down the players, these next few guys we don't want to talk about. The Golden State Warriors guy, he's only been playing because Curry and Butler have been out, so don't worry about him. Larson for Miami has played really well, so he's been filling in while Adebayo's out, while Tyler Hero is still out. He's been playing really well and had a really, really consistent week. So I don't know if that continues. Miami seem to trust him. But as you can see there, that Denver game, I mean, I know it's Denver and they pretty much dominate teams, but his floor is pretty low, Larson. So whilst he did play 2 games against Charlotte and Portland, I don't expect him to play that well. But at $5 million, it's still affordable. It's still someone that can make money for us. The next guy, Reed Shepherd, had a really big game today. So Houston's schedule coming up is terrible. If you haven't already got him, it's a bit of a hard sell because he hasn't really been playing too well. However, today was kind of his breakout game, as you will. He shot, I think, 16 points on really good percentages, had 4 steals, which is really nice, and didn't actually turn the ball over only once. And in the opening rounds, he's been turning the ball over quite a bit. So he's someone that, for me, who started, I'm really happy to continue keeping because he'll keep making money. If you haven't got him, I wouldn't stress too much about him. But again, if you're desperate, if you really need to make an extra $1 million cash, he's a nice one at that $5 million. Derek Queen, I think he's the main talking point here. He's on the Pelicans. They have the 4-4-4-4 coming up, then the 2 and another 4-4-4-4. So does he play consistently for those 9 weeks? Maybe not. Once Zion comes back, they've also got a center called Yves Missy, who's been missing as well this week from illness. They love to start him at center. So I don't think Derek Queen's minutes will be as high, nor will his production. He produced such a great couple of games this week. However, I think he's now played himself into some more playing time. I think he deserves it. The Pelicans the season's already done, to be honest. I know they like to play their veterans hard early, but he's someone that is really kind of demanded from the coach that he gets played more. And I think it's warranted. So as long as Zion's out and as long as Jordan Poole's out, there are shots that need to be taken and there are roles that need to be filled. So for the short term, and especially this week, I think it's a no-brainer to get Derek Queen in to kickstart some more cash gen for your team. If I look down the list, Cedric Coward's continued to be probably one of the best rookies in the league. So shout out to him. He was, I read up on Twitter today, a Division 3 college player about 2 years ago. And then he's all of a sudden in 2 years gone from Division 3 to Division 1. And then he's been taken with pick 8 by Memphis when he only played half a college season. He actually missed the summer league through injury. And he's pretty much just come in from game 1 like a ready-made player. So he's been really good. At $7.5 million, though, it's getting into that territory where, he's pretty much played as best as he can. Does he sustain that? Not too sure. The last one I want to touch on is from Boston, number 21, Josh Minot. He's one that a lot of people would have got in last week. Super low break even, was under the $5 million mark. It was a smart buy. Watching Boston play this week, he's a yin and a yang type player. Not in the way that he actually plays in terms of what he produces, because he's not meant to produce much. He's more of a defensive player, and that's where he gets unstuck. In his 2 games where he scored an 8, and what did he score today? A 3. He literally fouls really early. The coach does then not like the way he's playing and pulls him and plays someone like a Jordan Walsh or an Anthony Simons off the bench. So if Minot's playing well, he gets court time. As soon as he's not defending well, as soon as he picks up 2 early fouls, the coach pretty much says, you're in the doghouse for tonight. And that, for me, is really concerning. So if you have him, you keep him because the break-even's still low. And I expect him to continue to start for Boston. But, if he puts up 2 out of 3 bad games in a 3-game week, he's pretty much killed his cash gen right there. So don't get him in. But if you have him, you just keep him until you pretty much have to sell him. But while the break-even's low, you keep him.
Beautiful summary, mate. Beautiful summary. So there you go. Some of the cash cows to take a look at. All right, boys, I need to leave in about 15 minutes. to start coaching this basketball team. So let's finish off with about a 3-minute discussion about who we may be looking to captain this week. Now, Verns, just don't listen for a sec, mate. Hands over the ears. Boz, is it as easy as just slapping it on the Joker this week, the big fella?
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough question because they only has the 3 games this week, Denver, sorry. So that's tough. Like, I'm always going to captain, to be honest, someone on a 4-game week because I think the 4 games gives you the most potential or the biggest chance to score big. However, yeah, Jokic, if you forget to change your captain by tomorrow or if you just want to roll with him again, I think he can still, in 3 games, produce a top 10 score for the week. I wouldn't recommend it, though. I think we got to you play the game to kind of try and get the captain that scores the most, and I think that's not probably in your best interest to be doing that. So for me, Giannis is probably number 1. If you asked me that last week, and it was a 4-game week for Milwaukee, I was a little bit unsure because he just got rested in week 2. It seems like he's over that because he did play a back-to-back this week, and that's what I wanted to look for. He didn't get rested on their next back-to-back, so he actually played both games in a row. And I think that's a great sign for Giannis. He's still popping up on the injury tag, so it means he's still got something lingering, but he's also always being put down as probable, which means he's at 85, 90% chance of playing that game. So that's a good sign. So I actually would have Giannis number 1 because I like to give a bit of background on this. His round for week 4 is Dallas away, but they're no good. Charlotte away, they're no good, and he's going to come up against a rookie center in Kalkbrenner. They then go and play Charlotte at home. Okay, again, Charlotte at home is a good matchup. And then the back-to-back, they play the Lakers, which is an ESPN game. Because of the rest in between the first 3 games, I do expect Giannis to play all 3. And then I hope that he does play that back-to-back because they're versing the Lakers. It's on ESPN. You know, everyone's there to watch. It's on primetime TV. And I just think at least 3 out of those 4 matchups are really juicy for Giannis. I would then have Luka second, purely on ceiling, purely on what he's been doing so far this year. His efficiency has started to drop, and that's something that has been a knock on his career. But I think he just does so much while LeBron's out. I think Reeves comes back in their next game, but that does not deter Luka, as we've seen. When the games that Reeves has played, Luka's been going massive. So if you have Luka, I wouldn't put it against you. The only couple of knocks on Luka, and I don't want to always just put schedule down to who I select as captain, but I do think it plays a part. Like last week, I know Jokic is a no-brainer, but he played 4 games at home. That was a no-brainer. 4 games at home, you're in your own bed, you're comfortable, you're not traveling. It just makes a lot more sense. Luka this week has all 4 games away. So they're on a road trip. And it's a bit of an east-west road trip. So they kind of start east in Charlotte, which is a good matchup for Luka. Then off one night's rest, they go back west to go to Oklahoma. Then they stay west and play New Orleans. Then they go back out east to play Milwaukee. So there's a lot of traveling in that. There's that back-to-back with New Orleans and Milwaukee. There's a risk of the rest. I don't think he gets rested, but he might. But because he's ceiling so high, I think Luka's number 2. And then I'll actually put Wemby in as number 3. I just think he's a freak. If he can replicate, maybe not replicate, but if he can do what he's been doing in that week 1, especially, let's be honest, he averaged 6 blocks in week 1 and he averaged 2 blocks this week. He actually sits in between there at about 3.5 a game. So we should see he scores to uptick purely on his blocks. But he's got Chicago away, which I think is a toughish matchup with how well Nikola Vucevic has been playing. He then plays Golden State at home in a thing where they play Golden State twice in 3 nights. So he has a rest in between, but they play them at home 2 nights in a row, if that makes sense. Sorry, 2 games in a row. And I think Golden State have no center. They don't have a center. They play someone called Post, who is okay, but you'd expect Wemby, a top 5 player in the league, to be absolutely dominating. So Wemby could have 2 massive games against Golden State. And then lastly, he comes up against Sacramento, who I guess traditionally with Domantas Sabonis, that's a bit of a tough matchup. However, Sacramento are playing really poor at the moment. They're in a bit of a tough spot in winning games. And I think that Wemby can continue his way of dominance. And that's also another home game. So he's got 3 home games out of 4 there, Wemby. So yeah, he'd be a decent shout as well. They're my 3. Maybe a pot option, Donovan Mitchell. I think he's a good pot option if he plays all 4 games this week.
Love that, mate. Backing it up with the stats as well. 3 captains and a bit of a pot option. Vernsey, we're going to finish off with you before we say goodbye to this beautiful audience. Who are you looking to put the big C on this week, brother?
Yeah, I think Boz summed it up very nicely. I'm personally going to be going for Giannis. Went Giannis last week, second highest scoring player of the round. Yeah, he's just been super, super consistent. I think if you Giannis at minimum, you're not going to be unhappy. I do think with Luca, chance he misses a game, of course, could be unhappy. Wemby, his form, as much as we hope it turns around, if he plays like he did this week, you may be getting a low ton out of him and probably a bit unhappy. I think Giannis is almost guaranteed to make sure you're not unhappy. He's probably going to get you that 140 plus, and I feel very safe doing that.
Like it, safe and a big ceiling, good fixture, plenty of games for the round. I don't think you can really go wrong there. And I'm going to be really boring and follow your lead on that, legend. So that was the first live potty. It's been tough to get these out because there is an extremely quick turnaround in between rounds in this game. But boys, as usual, you absolutely smashed it. Boz, where can we find you on X? Any of the other socials, mate?
Yeah, just on X. Just look up SC Boz, you'll find me. Yeah, just post my weekly team at the start of the week. I post it at the end, see how I've gone. I like to interact. But yeah, that's all I really do.
Beautiful, mate. And Vernsy, we know that you have your own YouTube channel where you've just put a bit of content out. Give yourself a shout, mate.
Yeah, look, you can find me on X, just Verns_SC. Not as vocal as Boz on there. That man's always stirring. No, not really. But then YouTube, it's just Verns Supercoach. It's really just to keep up with my team, guys. Like, this is where the real discussion is. I just sort of put that up there, sort of talk about my own thoughts. And I'll be honest, since I've come to this pod, I've already changed those thoughts. So
love it. That's why I'm actually hosting this podcast. I know nothing about it, but I just take notes listening to you two, and that's helped me to get a top 1,000 rank so far. So, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Much appreciated. We'll be back soon with our GDS podcast. That's focusing on the NBL. Make sure you jump on if you haven't already. Get into our NBA league, our open league. Code is in the comment section there. And Vern's already touched on the Cup. The Cup is about to begin. So make sure you get these teams ready and let's just follow the advice of these two. So thanks again for joining me, guys. All the best. We'll see you again next week. Cheers, guys.